We're closing our eyes at the beginning of our conversation because it feels good. There's nothing to it really. We're not trying to follow any system, new age or ancient. We're not following any scripture, mantra or sutra. We're not reciting anything in our minds, in our thoughts when we're closing our eyes. We're just relaxing. And it's quite useful to close one's eyes in order to relax, because it breaks one's vision from one's surroundings, and therefore it makes it easier to relax. That's all. That's the only trick to it. But we're not reciting anything. We're not reciting any mantra in our head. We're not praying. We're not supplicating. We're not repeating anything that has been said before. We're not even becoming intentional. We're not trying to be intentional about ourselves. We're not trying to gather awareness, as is being promoted these days especially. We're not trying to be aware. We're not trying to be anything really. We're trying to do anything. We're not trying to concentrate. We're not trying to bring focus or attention to a particular topic or subject. We're just relaxing. We're relaxing so that we can engage in a very different conversation with each other, hopefully. We're relaxing so that we may let go of our day, which includes society. Therefore, we are letting go of society before we begin our discussion, or rather, so that we may begin our discussion. Otherwise, if we merely show up to this conversation as an extension of society, as agents of society, as agents of our own lives, our own day-to-day routine, which includes society again, and the toil and the struggle and the entertainment and the belief and tradition and the people and ideas and everything. If we merely show up to this discussion with all of that, then I'm afraid this is a stillborn discussion. Nothing really new can happen. Neither from this discussion, nor in any way, shape or form, I'm afraid. As long as we are merely extending the same thing, how can we expect, different results or a different world altogether, or a different human being, or a different psyche? I'm afraid that will not even make sense. And so, in the spirit of common sense and common sense alone, as brought about through our direct observation, nothing else, first-hand observation, not the observation of someone else, for that would be second-hand observation, that would be used observation, pre-owned, and therefore that will not take us anywhere. Not that we want to be somewhere, or that we have interests in being somewhere else, self-interests, group interests, ambitions, hopes, dreams, needs. We're not merely dismayed or discontented with our immediate lives, dissatisfied with our job or our family or our relationship, and therefore seeking something fantastical away from all that, we're not escaping. And therefore this is not an entertainment. We're not being entertained. We're not entertaining each other here, hopefully. Last time we spoke about the self and self-centeredness and the possibility to live without a self. If you think about it, if you really look at these words that we have talked about last time, what we're really saying, basically and very simply, we're saying, don't be selfish. That's it, really. What we're merely pointing to is, don't be selfish. Or the importance of not being selfish, the urgency of not being selfish, or the danger of being selfish, self-centered, concerned with this entity, whatever that entity is, or whatever makes up this entity, this concern, this obsession with it. Because we are obsessed with ourselves. Even when we are obsessed with our children, essentially we are obsessed with ourselves. Because I'm afraid our children are an extension of ourselves, an emotional or psychological extension of ourselves. Surely they are a physical extension of ourselves, in the sense, biological extension. Of course, they come from us, genetically, physically, biologically. But also, I'm afraid, it doesn't end there. Our children are also an emotional extension of ourselves. They are a means for us to fulfill our lives, to be self-fulfilled. Whatever we didn't do, we would like our children to do. Whatever we didn't have, we would like our children to have. And if you ask most people what their purpose are in life, their life purpose is, they'll tell you it's our children. It's their children. In fact, if you ask a lot of organizations, especially schools, and you ask them, what is your mission? What is your school's mission? They'll tell you, our children are our purpose. While that sounds wonderful, I question whether that is healthy for the children and for oneself. Children surely are everything, aren't they? They are the future of this planet, and maybe other planets too. They are the future custodians of this earth and all the resources in it and on it and above it. Plants, animals, natural resources, human resources. Your labor is a form of human resource. Don't you have a human resource department in your organization? Human resources are not merely departments in organizations. They are a form of energy. And we're not talking about any vanilla form of energy. We're not talking about some fantastical energy in the clouds. This is not a New Age sermon, I'm afraid. But energy in the sense, labor. You go to the office and you sell a product or a service, or you deliver a project, you build a bridge, etc. That is energy. That is human energy, natural energy, right? And that's very powerful. It can take us to the moon, it can destroy cities, and it can do wonderful things. That is a very powerful form of energy, human resources. And therefore, it's such a huge responsibility how we spend our energy, where we spend our energy, and how we do that. And therefore, human resources as part of natural resources, as part of natural resources as the wind, as the sun rays, etc., light, water, etc. It's part of earth, it's part of life. And so our children are the future custodians of all energy, all forms of energy. And yet, to not have a purpose apart from our children, I question whether that's healthy, and I question whether that doesn't mean that because we don't have purpose, sense of meaning, sense of passion in our own lives, we fulfill it through our children, and therefore they become an emotional, psychological, spiritual extension of ourselves. I question it. And I press on your hands to find a way to bring about passion in your own lives apart from your children. One must take care of one's children. One must feed them well, shelter them well, talk to them in a good way, not judge them, not compare them, not bully them, not abuse them, not mold them, condition them into what we are or what society is. And ladies and gentlemen, if one only does that towards one's children, that would benefit children and society and oneself and the entire world much more than simply making our children our only purpose or our purpose. Feed your child well. From their very first day. Don't feed them animal products, meat, animal milk, preservatives, synthetic foods that are made in factories and plants with all sorts of chemicals and flavors and colorings, most of them cancerous and disease causing. Feed them well, and you will have given them something really good, much more important than making them your purpose. Talk to them in a good way. Don't compare them to others. Don't bully them. Don't judge them. You will have given them something really good, much more important than making them your purpose. And so, if we go back to the thing that we've been talking about, the self, and how we live in selfishness and self-centeredness, group-centeredness, our children included in that, what we're really talking about is, don't be selfish. This is quite important to stop at for a moment, at least, because while this sounds very simple and basic, the importance of not being selfish. If you look around these days, everything is pushing us and everyone's pushing us to, or encouraging us in clever, subtle ways to be obsessed with oneself and one's well-being and one's own wellness and one's own personal development, spiritual development, etc. You see, humanity is stuck in a circle of selfishness, of self-centeredness, probably since the dawn of humanity. But every age brings different forms of selfishness and self-obsession. The present form or dominant form of self-obsession, I would probably say, is personal development, spiritual development, career, which is professional development. All of these, ladies and gentlemen, are a form of self-obsession. You wake up in the morning, you go about, you wake up, you go to work. And at work, you're very focused on getting that promotion, on becoming more skilled, more professional, more a better expert at what you do, acquiring more skills, more knowledge, professional knowledge. And that becomes a big part of your identity. It doesn't stop at the doors of your office when you leave it in the evenings. It doesn't stop there, unfortunately. It also enters your psychology, your emotions, the content of yourself. It forms a big part of who you are. And therefore, you become, in a very subtle way, self-centered when you are very focused on career. This is a subtle way of how you become self-centered. And when they tell you don't focus too much on work, balance it. Do more work-life balance. That is another form of self-obsession. Not only now are you professionally centered, you are now also personally centered. Professional development, and now also personal development, spiritual development. Enter, the whole entertainment industry, the whole spiritual industry, yoga, coaching, mentoring, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, psychiatry, and many other, professions belonging to that industry. Gurus, motivational speakers, you name it. And therefore, you become even more self-centered. Not only now are you spending a lot of hours during the day focusing on your professional development, now you're also spending additional hours focusing on your personal development. Becoming a better individual, becoming more clear-minded, more aware, better at managing your anger, better at loving your partner, better at yoga postures. And I'm not making fun of yoga. In fact, I'm a yogi myself, a yoga teacher, in fact. But I'm afraid if you do yoga hoping to attain something spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological, I'm afraid, you're going to be disappointed. You might be entertained though. You might have certain experiences. And the gurus will build on those experiences, will feed them. And for brief moments, you might feel something a little different than your boring, dull, professional life. And then you might try to come back to that feeling, that experience every now and then as part of work-life balance, right? But I'm afraid this is all too silly. And this is not only all too silly, this is extremely dangerous. Because as you are self-obsessed this way, the world is going to hell. Literally. And this is not a sob story. This is not a nihilistic view of the world. This is not a pessimistic view. And this is not, something that, there's not an opinion or a point of view. As reality. Must we really spend time talking about how the world is actually in hell? Not only going to hell, but actually in hell? Since a very long time. Must we spend a lot of time on that? Isn't that quite obvious? I mean, all you need to do is open the news and to see what's going on. We seem to be degrading more and more even as a society. They talk about democracy and they talk about diversity and they talk about national interests and protecting their own people and national security. More employment for their own citizens, more income, taxing foreign countries more, reducing crime, etc. And people fall for these stories, unfortunately. As we become more self-obsessed, self-centered, the world continues its nosedive into hell. If you're spending your time and your days and your years and your life, the twilight of your life, if you're spending it on professional development and personal development, who's going to attend to our big issues, our societal issues, the issues of youth, of our youth, of our children, of education, of economy, of poverty, of displacement, of war and murder and armaments? Who's going to attend to those things? The big organizations, the unions, the confederations, the governments. We are those governments. We are those organizations. We are those unions. We are those United Nations. We are those entities which we delegate the important big tasks to. We are them and they are us. The people in those entities share the same psychology as us. They are also self-centered. They are also focused and obsessed with their own professions, getting promoted in their own organizations, in governments and offices and seats of power. That's what they're interested in mostly. And they're also interested in their personal development. They can't wait to go on a vacation, exotic vacation with their families in their time off. In their time off when they are not killing and when they are not being careless about society and poverty and the rest of it. So we are them and they are us. So who's going to attend to the big issues of this planet? The man-made issues, the human-made issues. You see, even before we enter the topic of selfishness and self-centeredness, it's important to stop for a moment and appreciate the danger of selfishness, the danger of self-centeredness and self-obsession, even the noble forms of self-obsession, which include self-awareness, spirituality, peace of mind, self-actualization, meaning, purpose, etc.